All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the 56th Chicago International Film Festival. This is a Q&A for Shorts 1, our city and state program. These films are Chicago or Illinois made or produced or have some sort of connection to Chicago and Illinois. So we're happy to welcome all of these filmmakers. I'm going to start by asking everyone to please introduce yourself and say the name of your film, just so we can kind of put faces to names here. So why don't we start with the team from Patois? Could you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'll go first. Hi, my name is Zachary Moore. I'm the producer of Patois.
I'll go next. My name is Andre Muir. I'm the co-director and writer for the short, Patois.
And my name is Danielle Alston. I'm co-director of Patois.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and my film is Reversal. Director, editor.
I'm Hannah Welever. I'm the director, producer of Swipe Up Vivian. Happy to be here.
My name's Orlando, and I'm the director for Pegasus.
Hi, my name's Lisa Barcy. I'm the director / animator for the Ephemeral Orphanage.
Hi, my name is Alex Heller, and I'm the writer and director of Grizzlies.
Hi, I'm Ian Bertorelli, and I'm the director of Sacred Brick Technology.
Hi, I'm Ben Strang, and I'm the director of A Mystery to Me.
Great, thanks everyone for being here. I want to start by just kind of asking a general question for everyone about the beginnings of your films, the genesis, the inspiration. I'd like you to talk a little bit about sort of how you came to the project and sort of talk about the first steps and first early days of the project. So Patois, why don't you guys go ahead and take this one first?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I had to unmute it. Yeah, so I came up with the idea for it. There's like this, there's this Emile Cioran quote that I really liked. I think I saw it on a video game or something, but it's a really dope one. It's language is our fatherland. We have no, I actually can't finish the quote, but it's language is our fatherland. That aside, I really liked the quote, and it kind of inspired me just because growing up in Chicago as a child, a child of immigrants, child of Jamaican immigrants, my parents, they speak a thing called Patois, which is called it's considered a broken down language, a broken down version of a language is a Patois. A slang of a language. And so my entire life, I always kind of equated, the fact that it was broken down as being second fiddle or just not being good or being wrong. And I just hated the fact that I was Jamaican. And I just always wanted to be American. I really wanted to fit in. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized that, being a child of immigrants is kind of one of the better things about myself. And so I wanted to make the film kind of as as almost an apology, because I was a little brat to my parents, I didn't even invite them to my basketball games, or literally in school, I'd act like they weren't my parents kind of thing. Because I was embarrassed because they talk different, they look different. And so, yeah, this film was kind of an apology for that. But yeah, and it definitely, and I really wanted it to kind of deal with, I wanted language to end up being the hero in the story. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I kind of wrote it. And me and Danielle started talking about it, and Zach, and then, did I answer the question? I don't know if I answered that question.
No, it was a good answer. Yeah.
Okay.
Danielle and Zach, since Andre waxed poetic, can you guys talk about how you came to the project?
Oh, well, me and Andre, we were coming off of our last short film. So he just reached out and said he was working on this new project and kind of explained what it was about and the inspiration behind it and the driving force behind it. And I was fully on board with it. I think the quote you were looking for, Andre, was, is it the people inhabit the language, or the language inhabit the people. That's how they continue the culture. It was something like that, but that's how I got involved.
Hey, can I please say this quote? Because I found it. Okay, great. Because now we look ridiculous. All right. It is, one does not inhabit a country, one inhabits a language. That is our country, our fatherland, and no other. And I thought that was just really powerful. And it kind of was a reassurance, being a kid of the diaspora, you kind of lose your connection to, your roots and everything like that. So having that connection to language, and is like a really powerful thing for me, and was kind of what, spurred all of this.
Yeah, I kind of came on the project after Andre had written it, and he sent it to me. And I think I came on as kind of like the translator, because the story is told from a female perspective. So I came on, and I think we kind of worked together from that perspective of how does this story translate through a female's words and perspective, especially with the main kind of like thing that brings all the characters together being their period. So I think that's like usually a really personal story for a woman. And I thought it was really interesting that Andre wanted to tell that perspective. And I think it kind of worked out perfectly that he was able to incorporate or tell this story about language and about heritage. And I was able to kind of contribute a story about womanhood, which kind of parallels, and all of that stuff kind of happens at the same time when you're a kid. So yeah.
Great, thanks you guys. Jennifer, could you talk about the sort of inception, early stages of reversal?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of a lot of different variables that brought me to this film. Partly was just moving to Chicago and not really knowing anybody and becoming strangely fascinated with the river, and wondering why everybody kind of detested it or didn't know anything about it. And I ended up spending a lot of time there, learned how to row, and kind of became my place in the city and became my way of learning about the city. And so it's sort of a story, started off a story of sort of obsession, just with place and trying to think about the things that we experience and maybe see every day, but don't really know about or understand the histories behind it, the social, ecological, all these layers, and also the fact that we are highly dependent on this river, than the fact that it's tied to our sewage system and our drinking water, and most of us don't know that. So it was kind of through that personal engagement with the place that I'm also very interested in archives, and thinking about how we can create an archive of climate change and an archive of our past, archive of capitalism, really, and thinking about the relationship between humans and our environment. And so I came across this photography archive just through my obsession with the river and just kind of learning more about it, and discovered this archive that was created at the turn of the 19th century, consisting of over 20,000 photographs documenting the reversal of the river, and just became equally obsessed with that, and just was determined to animate it and bring it to life through sound and through movement. So that's it in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. Orlando, can you talk about the sort of origins of Pegasus?
For sure. So I was on the train, the Chicago train, on the Red Line, going home, and my friend Malik had put me on the Sun Ra, and Sun Ra, like, he created some like wild Afrofuturism, like jazz fusion type music, and And one song particularly, Space is a Place, that was kind of playing on repeat. That's kind of like the phase I was in at that time. And I don't know, like a notification popped up on my phone, and someone else had been killed by the cops. And so it kind of just like solidified that idea of like, is there a place on this planet that could be free, could be safe? And then I brought the idea to Malik, and it was kind of a wrap. He wrote the script. We brought it to the producer. Yeah, it grew from there.
Great, thank you. Alex, why don't you tell about the sort of inception of Grizzlies?
Okay. I am 27 and I just moved out of my parents' house like last fall. For Grizzlies is about like an adult daughter. It's a comedy who still lives at home, and she and her mom have a really codependent relationship where both of them are often made victims of they are the victims of people around them, like they're targets for bullies of different ages. So anyway, my mom has always been this really like savage defender of me ever since I was a kid, and then it was like fine, and then I was old and it was weird. And the event that like sparked me writing this script was I had like, it's so dumb, but I had this laptop that my computer like ingested a liquefied banana, and it was I brought it into the store and I had a warranty. It's man. And they were like, at the store, they were like, yo, your warranty doesn't cover this. So my mom like came to the store and like attacked verbally the people working there and was kicked out by security. And then I was like, well, and then I wrote this. And that's it.
Thank you. The liquefied banana, I like that image. Lisa, why don't you go next? Can we talk about the Ephemeral Orphanage, the beginnings?
Sure. So that started when my grandmother was alive. She lived to be almost 101. So and she lived in Chicago, and so I, even as a college student, I was constantly at her house. And so it started when I was rooting around in her attic, which was one of the fun things that I loved to do when I was over there, was just to look through old stuff, because she never threw anything out, Depression era grandparents. And I found a box of paper dolls in a closet, on a shelf, and they were in a shoebox. And the shoebox was so old that it was still made out of wood. And it was just, there were about 100 of these things. There were so many of them, and they were all cut out of the Sunday color supplement of the newspaper. And I did a little digging around, a little research. I found out that they had been cut out of the Chicago Tribune, and she saved them, and she had named all of them. So you look on the back, and there had been names handwritten in cursive, which it looks like old lady handwriting, but she was like maybe 10 when she had these. So yeah, and I asked her about them, and she said, oh, I forgot about these. I didn't know I had them. And this is what she said, this is what the poor kids played with, because you got it in the newspaper. But there were just so many of them. And I've always made animations out of found objects or found images. I've done a lot of collage artwork, animated and non-animated. And, of course I saw them and it's like, I don't know what I'm going to make with these, but I'm going to animate them. They were really fragile. I had to scan all of them, and I printed them all out. it was a little bit of a kind of a cart before the horse situation, in that I spent a long time just making puppets without realizing what the hell I was going to do with them. And really, so it became kind of like, you know, I'm sitting in my studio playing with my dolls now. And in much the same way, when you're a kid and you have these, you don't go in knowing what you're doing, you just start improvising. And so a lot of the animation and a lot of the ideas for different scenes kind of came out of me just playing under the set with my dolls.
Great, thank you so much. Ian, why don't you tell us about Sacred Brick Technology and how you came to sort of tell the story of Chicago brickwork?
I grew up in the trades, and I've always really been fascinated by bricks. I grew up here in Chicago, and there's a lot of bricks, and I started just meditating on how the city is just kind of made out of the mud that it stands on. And it got me thinking about how sort of, there's so much of Chicago history I learn about it as an adult, and it changes my my worldview and my view of Chicago. And I just thought examining the sort of this physical link between the city and its history and the actual place could come up with something maybe like, I don't know, it could be an exciting thing to look at as a Chicagoan. So that was kind of the genesis of the idea.
Great, thank you. And Benjamin, why don't you tell us about A Mystery to Me and the beginnings there?
Sure. The film A Mystery to Me is about this woman, Vanetta, who has this rare and mysterious autoimmune disease that causes this like profound muscular weakness. And like 18 months ago, so I made the film with Swarovski Pictures in Chicago. And 18 months ago, we learned about this disease and just kind of became fascinated by it. Nobody really knows about this. A lot of autoimmune diseases most people don't know about. This one is called myasthenia gravis. So this bizarre name, nobody had heard about it. And we learned that these people that have this disease really kind of like don't have a spotlight. They don't have much of a community or a camaraderie between them. And we just started hearing really interesting stories about people that have this disease. It's a very bizarre life experience. You just like completely out of the blue, one day I'll wake up and have no physical strength, like sometimes not even be able to type on a keyboard. And the next day you're totally fine. So it's this very kind of like personal mystery. And we just kind of got sucked into it and kind of went down the rabbit hole of trying to find stories that would be a representation of what the disease experience is, but also positive and interesting for a broad audience to watch and learn about it, which is the hardest thing to do when you're dealing with a subject matter like a rare disease. So yeah, that's the genesis.
Thank you. And Hannah, bring us home and talk about the genesis of Swipe Up, Vivian.
The genesis. So Addison and I have worked together quite a bit. He's the writer, producer, and he actually, this is the third installment of like a short film series he calls Slight Future. So it kind of feels like Black Mirror, but also like usually queer characters and a bit funnier than Black Mirror ever could be. But yeah, he had this idea of this girl being trapped inside, not being able to leave, because we're kind of in like a post-war, like future America. And we had been talking about it for a while and then like bit the bullet and we're like, okay, we're doing it like in the next 6 months. And for a while there, I was kind of thinking we would do it in like Joshua Tree, where she'd be living in like an RV, kind of like Breaking Bad vibes, but just like totally desolate, like nothing around her. But then we agreed to do it in Chicago. And so I shifted everything to be like way colder and like high rise. Like Chicago winter, desolate, isolated. So yeah, it was cool to sort of work with him and find like the right way to because like not always a movie is like also when can people film and like how much money do we have, and so it was fun to like navigate the creative choices while like making a deadline and trying to get things done. But I love how it turned out. We got to shoot in Marina Towers, which was like a dream, and it's also like a total bitch to shoot in there, so that was cool. But yeah, I really wanted like some brutalist architecture. But yeah, you guys should watch the film, and I hope you dig it.
So thanks everyone for sort of introducing these films to us. It's funny because I mean, obviously you just heard the films are so varied. It's so many different kinds of work being presented in this program, which is part of why it's one of my favorites every year to put together. I think that the talent pool in Chicago and Illinois, like it's unbelievable. But it is funny how things kind of like unintentionally coalesce within a program. So there are these certain sort of themes running throughout the films. And I know you guys might not have all seen each other's work, but there's this kind of group of works in here that I think are reflective of the current moment in some kind of way. I guess however you want to define the current moment. But to me, like A Mystery to Me and Swipe Up, Vivian, and Pegasus are all very sort of speaking to the current moment, maybe unintentionally with Swipe Up Vivian, this like agoraphobic story. Everyone is housebound now because of the pandemic. I'm sure it wasn't shot with the knowledge in mind that the pandemic was soon to befall us. But
I know, Sam, maybe I just have I got a good hunch about things.
Yeah, predicted the pandemic. But A Mystery to Me filmed, there's a title card at the beginning saying that it was filmed during the pandemic or partially during the pandemic. Ben, can you talk about sort of what that meant to the production?
Yeah, it was very bizarre. It's a very we had a very strict quarantine stipulation that was put in place right like the week we were about to book our flights to go shoot the documentary. So we were pretty much ready to go in March, and then the quarantine happened, and we were debating whether or not we would continue. And we decided that we were going to try and figure out how to make the movie remotely. So I've actually never met the subjects of the film in person. I've been in close communication with them for about a year, but it's all been over Zoom. So we sent them a Sony camera that could connect to the internet, and we sent them one of the fancy iPhones that has, can record 4K and stuff. And we started cataloging their archival footage from all their iPhone, archives. And we made the films with a mixture of self-shot footage that they recorded on the iPhones we sent them, and then like 6 days of principal photography that was us telling them where to put the camera and then film them doing specific things and remote controlling the camera from all over the country, actually.
Yeah, and can I ask about sort of developing the relationships and trust with your subjects? Because the film is so like, the subject of the film sort of lays her life bare, and sort of everyone who appears in the film does. So can you talk about over Zoom developing that kind of relationship?
It's kind of funny. I went into it expecting there to be more, like the distance was going to be a problem for us. Like I wasn't going to be able to make the relationship that a documentary is typically built on, which is typically some form of closeness or at least intellectual closeness between the subject and the director. But bizarrely, the mixture of having close conversations and really connecting over our storytelling over Zoom, but also the distance that filming remotely provided gave us this intimacy where we weren't actually in the room with them, but the camera was there and they didn't really feel intruded upon. So we could figure out what scene we were going to do. Like there's a breakfast scene, and we shot that single camera. They just had the one camera there, and they set up their breakfast, and we shot 4 shots and asked them to go back and repeat a few things that they talked about. We shot it once the first time, and then went back and covered some stuff. And every time they'd forget the camera was there after 5 seconds, and they would just start being awkward and themselves and being great. And it was really lovely. And I would actually think about doing it again, if given both options, because they were just very intimate. They just forgot we were there.
Thanks. So another sort of in this like current moment, Pegasus is a film about very directly about police brutality in the Chicago Police Department. So Orlando, can you? And it's very visually bold. There's this kind of central visual metaphor interwoven with footage of police killings. Orlando, can you talk about sort of balancing your visual ideas with this kind of very pointed realism that the film has?
For sure. Well, I guess two parts. It was a huge collaboration. It was a really huge collaboration. And this is something that is not quite current because it's always been going on. It's been happening, something that's been happening forever. At least since since the birth of the Chicago Police Department. So in a sense, it kind of felt like we were touching on something that shouldn't have been touched on in this fashion, And so it wasn't something that came easy or came lightly, and there's a lot of thought that came with it. And ultimately, the decision came down to, like, why are we making this? Why are we doing something like this? And I think it came down to the ending, and creating a brighter future, or like a safe area where somebody could finally feel free. After a film of all this like tension and like fear, to create this ending where our main character is floating in space, like without having to worry about earthly oppression or anything related to this planet. I think that is probably the most, something that reflects the time period the most, because if it were 10 years ago, I don't think the team would have had the insight to create this happy and freer ending, because right now everything feels so overwhelming and so like everything's kind of hard right now. And so by creating that ending, it was like it was definitely informed by what's going on right now. Like how can we create, if not just for 10 seconds, a little space to breathe?
So circling back to Hannah and the current moment and the sort of the COVID moment, make sort of meshing pretty well with this story of agoraphobia. You talked about how it's like this near future, right? This like sort of, I don't know what your term was for it, but like sci-fi in the very, very near future. Can you talk about like balancing which details? Because some of them you've just like nailed so perfectly, and it isn't exaggerated in any kind of way. So can you talk about like reining yourself in to like make it feel sort of real?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, when I watch a sci-fi, it's elements of different generations. It's not always super futuristic, but my future is very like, I wanted her like ethnicity to be a bit ambiguous. That was important to me because that seems like something of the future. Also elements of technology, but not heavy-handed. So like we have apps that are familiar, but they're just displayed differently. So it feels familiar, but then it's polished in a way that, what are some good examples? Like we have like the film starts with this like audio recording of like a curfew. So like this curfew is instated, we're seeing like empty Chicago. So the world is bigger, but then we are transported to like her small 1-bedroom apartment where she has all these like familiar items. So I think it was really important for me to build the world, but then also like, what does someone who's like my age in this future look like? What are they wearing? What are they eating? And what are they interacting with? So that it feels real to people watching it now, but then could be sort of, the time is any time. There is no date on it. But thanks for saying that. No, I think it turned out really cool. And it was just because of the hybrid mentality of incorporating different things from different times.
Thank you. So the second sort of grouping of works in this program, I think, reckon with Chicago history in some way, or are, so I guess this sort of umbrella, I'm thinking of sacred brick technology, the reversal, and the ephemeral orphanage. The ephemeral orphanage is an assemblage in the same way that or in a much different way than the reversal is, but still sort of using these artifacts. We'll start with Jennifer. I want to talk about sort of how you go about arranging this like wealth of archival material, and how do you not stand just completely overwhelmed by 20,000 photographs? Like how do you know where to start?
Well, that's generous. I mean, I was definitely overwhelmed, and it was very challenging. I think the film was formed in the edit, so you're going into it knowing that there's something there, but I don't have a script, and I didn't know what it was I was doing. It's just a kind of a process of sifting and getting to know the archive and really immersing yourself in the archive and playing around with moving stuff around, creating clusters, thinking about how you can arrange, and through that process, starting to discover this kind of essence or like ghost that is in the archive. And so it was definitely not anything that I had planned out before and then shaped the archive to fit an idea. I do think that a lot of the ways that I decided to structure it were very much shaped by my thinking in the present day and about our now and about climate change and about our relationship to resources and to the environment. But that wasn't really a given. And so it's kind of negotiating lots of things at the same time. My state of mind, my way of thinking, but also how can I do justice to this archive, but also how can I undercut the archive? Because it's an institutional archive. It was used in service of the city. It was used as an instrument in some ways to, well, just a little history. So the reversal of the river did cause a lot of damage downstream and put a lot of farmers out and destroyed a lot of ecosystems. And so there were a lot of lawsuits that were the results of that. And so photographers were partially commissioned to go down and photograph landscapes that would then be used as evidence against these people when they took the city to court. So a lot of the images were about documenting their construction, but also about using evidence so that they didn't have to pay for the destruction that they had caused. But then it's also about these larger issues of our, capitalism and our relationship to nature, and this idea that nature is boundless and that we can shape it to our needs, and that that the destiny and the time is all for human beings, and that we're not actually rooted in this larger ecological time frame. So all of those things kind of went into it. And then eventually I just kind of played around with different ways of structuring it and kind of came up with this idea of kind of feeling like you're moving through time and space as if you're kind of on this clock of capitalism. So it's moving very fast, very destructively, in this way of like, moving toward an end, but then I'm undercutting it in some ways by saying, we're not really going anywhere. There's destruction along the way. And then kind of turning it into being a film that's not just about the river, but also about this like larger allegory of the moment that we're living in. So, and then sound design's another story, but we can talk about that another time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's truly, it's a work of like pure cinema almost, and the way that the photographs are arranged, it almost feels as though there's like somebody with a camera on a tripod and you're sort of
yeah.
Quite an effect.
Thank you.
So another work of assemblage, but quite different, the Ephemeral Orphanage. Lisa, can you talk about, so it's this like full of vignettes that are whimsical, but also have this kind of dark undercurrent throughout all of it. Can you talk about like coming up, like how how you're inspired to make a certain scene or a certain image when animating with these like found objects?
Well, I think part of the unsettling quality of the puppets was, of course, that they had deteriorated to a certain extent. So just about every one of them was missing something, either part of their head or some limbs. I think there were very few puppets that were intact. And rather than just try to recreate that and make that whole, I just kind of made that, that's what they look like. That's part of the story. We don't really know how they got the way they are, but that I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think that kind of gives them that slightly creepy edge to them. And people have like weird feelings about dolls anyway. And, they have this, kind of antique patina to them to begin with. And so, but I've always been inspired by old movies. I've also been inspired by old cartoons a lot. That's what I watched mostly. Like, we didn't actually go to the movies very much. So everything was on, it was either like reruns on TV. And so I've always, it's like this, I think a lot of my work has this mix of things looking slightly unsettling, but then there's this kind of Tex Avery humor to a lot of it sometimes, because I like a good pratfall. And part of that just entered into the fact that these are children, and they're playing and they're imagining things. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm answered the question or not, or just rambling at this point.
No, I think you answered the question really well. The blend of animation, the multiple techniques, especially like the brain, that central image of that girl's exposed brain is something that really sticks with me.
Yeah, thanks. It's actually sand animation. Then I put it in After Effects, but it's a very different feel from animating puppets, because puppets are very rigid and self-contained, and doing anything hand-drawn or sand, you can get all like really organic and morphy and stuff like that. So I like the contrast between those two.
Great, thanks. And so this last film, in this kind of grouping in my brain, if it makes any sense at all anymore, as a sacred brick technology, there's some really stunning just photography of bricks, and it's this kind of seemingly inherently uncinematic idea of like the image of the still brick on screen, but it plays extremely beautifully. So I'm wondering, Ian, can you talk about like the process of like selecting, like, are you just a brick expert now? Do you notice the beauty in the bricks as you stroll the streets of Chicago? Can you talk about like photographing and like making the bricks into cinema?
I definitely have a deeper appreciation for bricks now, I guess, but it was really just a process of driving around and seeing bricks and compulsively filming them for months, and not really, as soon as you like block out some time to do it, you don't get very far. It's like, covering like a block takes such a long time because the scale of what you're covering is like so small. And then also I really got attuned to the sort of sun axis that Chicago is on, like, shooting from like a certain direct, thinking of the city of only viewing it from the direction the sun is, because most of the film is shot with available light. So a lot of the bricks I really wanted to get, I'd be like, oh man, that's on a wall that I'm not going to be able to shoot. So, but yeah, I think really just like anything, the more you learn about it and the more you look at it, I'm reminded of like a prairie conservationist, Steve Packard, who has a technique where they just sort of like block off a square foot where you're standing and start to list off the species that you see at your feet. Pretty much wherever you are, you can do this. And the closer you get to the ground, the more scale just reveals things to you. So the deeper you go into something, it's just kind of infinite, I guess. So in this case, it was bricks.
Yeah, and it almost gives it kind of a spiritual element, this like vast landscapes contained in these tiny bricks. So I think it works. It's a really strong and striking approach. And then kind of moving to our last grouping of films. These are sort of like keenly observed works, I would say, maybe coming of age. Both Grizzlies and Patois are sort of moments of realization in a younger person's life. So I guess I'll start with Patois. There's a particular scene where they're playing like a schoolyard name game. I don't know exactly what the name of the game, but you're like listing foods in a circle, and the first person to slip up is a loser, I guess. But you shot it so strikingly because it moves from like profile to profile, and then it suddenly stops at the main character. Can you talk about like in like that scene, what it means to the film, and then sort of how you envision that rhythm of that scene works so well?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so the film itself definitely deals with the idea of language, and I wanted to kind of, there's other aspects of a culture that really, embody the culture. There's always, dress, the way that people talk, slang, but also food. Food is like a really, important aspect to like each culture, each nation. And so I thought of that idea to do that scene where they're kind of just playing a kind of childhood name game that, but I thought it would be like a nice little Easter egg if it was food that they were kind of using to kind of bounce around with. And I just, the reasoning for doing the kind of bounce from face to face to face is just, I just remember this when I was a kid. You're playing these games and you're trying not to mess up, and you're just kind of rehearsing in your head. And it just kind of, to me, shooting it that way kind of just resembled that. Like, cause like when you're kind of waiting for your turn, even like right now, like while we're on Zoom, it's like, we're kind of bouncing from head to head to head, and you're kind of watching each person, and you kind of do the same thing. And so I wanted the camera to kind of imitate that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like also like with the momentum of it, it was kind of cool because like you're seeing everybody in the same perspective, in the same light, and it kind of like makes all of these girls, it gives them all something in common. And it takes this like innocent situation where they finally all have something in common. And then we start to see like the anxiety grow as we like stop on the main character, and she's waiting, thinking about what she's going to contribute to this. And like in that moment, we really single her out and realize that like, obviously she realizes that she's different, but I think it really like exaggerates for the audience that this girl is different in the most simplest way, in that she can't even play this game. Correct.
Yeah, she can't. Yeah, so she ends up pronouncing the word the wrong way, like with an accent. And like, I did, and to Danielle's point, I thought that's really what I liked about it, was that it was such a simple like thing for her to mess up that it ends up causing her to, like go to the bathroom and cry. But like, that's what life's like when you're a little kid. So like, yeah, I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when you're younger, like that moment feels so huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like doing these tight shots on their faces and then stopping on her, we were able to like kind of bring an adult audience back into that moment to feel the pressure of that moment. Because like as adults, we're kind of just like, okay, it's just a game, get over it. But really just to kind of like exaggerate and stretch out that moment so that you remember like how important every little thing with your friends was as a kid.
Yeah, the film just has these like sort of really specific, relatable observations, and it's funny for me to be able to relate to the characters in this film. But it's like, oh yeah, it is a bummer when your mom shows up to elementary school and is like very involved in like teaching a class or like serving food or something like that. So that I connected with that, and so I think it gets to this idea of these like very specific observations becoming the like universally sort of applicable. And speaking of like overbearing mothers, Grizzlies, the cast in Grizzlies is phenomenal, and it seems to me that that's a lot of not professional actors. Can you? And is your own mother playing the role of the mother?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about working with because it really is a fine, she at once performs a mother very well, but also is clearly somebody's mother. So can you talk about working with your mom?
Yeah. Well, actually she wasn't my first choice to work with. Like I mean, she knows that as well, but I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like I intended on working with like an actor, and the short kind of came together like sort of last minute because it was originally supposed to take place at a pool, but we were shooting it in the fall. So then there were no pools open, and then it became Dairy Queen, and it was just crazy. So like the location kind of dictated when we were going to shoot it, and then it was too short notice to like find like a proper actress, I guess, like professional. So I actually had made a little short a couple years ago that my mom, it was essentially like the same concept, I guess, like everything I've ever made is like the same story over and over again. And I played like myself, and she played my mom, and she is my mom, and she was actually really funny and like could memorize lines pretty efficiently. So I asked her if she like wanted to do it. We also shot it like at my house or her house, yeah. And she was just like down. I mean, I think she really likes acting. Even though she's not a trained actor, I think she has a ton of fun with it. And it was kind of intense working with her sometimes, like I think working with non-actors, as probably many or all of you know, like can be really awesome and deliver some really unique performances, but at the same time, it can have its challenges for sure. I think, like just I think a lot of actors are used to taking direction and not taking it personally, and just kind of adapting very quickly. But sometimes I think working with non-actors, you have to kind of be a little more delicate and strategic, and especially when it's me directing my mom and in front of a lot of people. And sometimes it got a little tense, but ultimately, that's kind of our relationship. We're like incredibly close. We fight a good amount. We're like great friends, and so I guess like our directing acting relationship kind of mirrored that at the end of the day. And then it helps that she had an amazing co-star who is a professional actress. Alston is an actor and was a Second City like main stage person, comedian. So I think having her play opposite someone who was so professional and cool and supportive was very helpful. I wouldn't say I'm like the most cool person on set. I'm a little like crazy, but it is what it is,
Yeah, I think the film says a lot. It's funny for like kind of a brash comedy to say so much subtly, but it does very well with small moments sort of being incredibly revealing. So yeah, I guess now if any of you have questions for any of the other filmmakers here, if you've seen the work, if you want to respond to something anyone says, feel free. If not, we can kind of wrap things up. I know we're going on an hour here, so I appreciate you all sticking with me.
Can I ask a question? Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you a question actually, which is funny.
And I
So
have one for you.
that the idea was so incredibly original and beautiful, and I'm just curious where that came from, or what like when you were like you found these dolls, and when you decided you were going to make something, what made you go in that direction? Like at one point we shoot off in the spaceship, and it's like we go to another planet, and there's body parts coming out of like flowers. It's so beautiful. I'm just curious what, yeah.
So the film, I spent several years on it. I think it took about 8 years to make, and I wasn't working on it all the time, and I think that's one of the things that happens sometimes with a film or an animation, at least, where I would get too busy because I'd be teaching, and suddenly I'd only have either the summer or the winter break to animate, and so I had a lot of time to brew in between there, which is and part of that came from I immediately had this instinct when I found them to put them in a situation that people don't ordinarily associate with cute little girls from the 1920s. And, so part of that was just, being purely rebellious feminist of like, I'll show you what they can do. And, but at the same time, I've always been really fascinated with how people in the past thought the future looked like. And I love to watch like really old sci-fi movies, or I'd like to see kind of like, if you look at old Popular Mechanics magazines, you'll see like the car of the future, and they look futuristic, but they also look really old, and I like that juxtaposition right there. And like I watched a bunch of like old Soviet sci-fi movies, so just that sensibility always appealed to me. And I'm not quite sure where the flowers came from. I think I animated myself into a story hole, and I was like, I got to get out of this. So I'm not sure. But it just, when things start falling together, it feels really great. But when it's in so many pieces and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's like the most nerve-wracking feeling ever. So my question for you, speaking of futuristic and space stuff, was just really about, even that spaceship has kind of this old clunky look to it. Like it looks like it was found in a junkyard. And like, what was like the thinking behind the design of that? And I do have kind of like just a nuts and bolts question of how you made both the exterior shot and the interior shot work.
That's my question too, how you put together that spaceship, and at the end did like the zero-G effect. I thought that was very well done from a production design standpoint.
Oh, and also I just thought the film was really beautiful, so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I could take credit for that. So my production designer, Jack Stern, Jack, if I said if I said the wrong last name, Jack's gonna kill me. But Jack is an incredible production designer. We were originally gonna do a full giant 15-foot spaceship, and we're doing it through the school, and we built the frame, and Kelly, who was on set, I forget her exact role, but she was like, she called us in there and she was like, guys, we can't do that. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, how are we going to get it to the location? How are we going to move it? It doesn't make any sense. And so then with the help of our cinematographer, Denaja Collier, we all decided to do forced perspective. And also all the teachers of the program, they kind of gave us some tips on it. and we pulled it off. It was, I'm not going to say how high it actually was, but it's a lot smaller than I hope it looks. As far as the look of it, we wanted it to look kind of phantasmic, like you weren't sure if it was real in the flesh or if it wasn't. And so by it being built from pieces of junk, the whole idea is things that you might see in an alley. So like, I think on the inside, Jack had put like broken up TV screens and mouse pads and keyboards and fan switches and all these different things. But the idea is everything that one would actually see, nothing that you'd have to go to a crazy fancy lab to find, you know? And so behind that kind of lies like using the junk or using the shit in your life to kind of get out of it, which is, you know, which is kind of, I don't know. Yeah. I guess I'm trying to say more, but I think that's it. Yeah, that's that.
And I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. And I know it's getting long. An hour Zoom meeting is a tough thing to handle at the end of the day. But I know Hannah has a question for Danielle. So we can maybe end on that.
Yeah, Danielle, I wanted to ask you, as like a photographer, at least like that being a huge part of your like creative outlet with this film, because I haven't seen it yet, but it's fun to hear things and then I'll watch it afterwards. But what did you feel certain moments that you wanted, that like what creatively did you bring in with your photo skills? Like, did you ever find yourself like thinking in that way, or is that always how you're thinking? Or I'm just curious what that process was like for you.
Yeah, I feel like I do a pretty good job of like turning off my photo mind and turning on my directing mind. I just think of, you know, the camera, I just think of it as like, and I'm still capturing photo, but it's just kind of like moving image. So like a lot of times when I'm on set, I don't even take any photos just because I'm like, I've already captured this moment. It's just in a different way. But I do think that like, because with photo, it's a still image. And so you really have to pay attention to like all of the details that are in the shot, because you can't just like pick a later frame or, you know, kind of like you're not, you know, you're watching people talk, so you're not necessarily looking at the background. Whereas like photo, you spend time kind of like looking at every inch of the composition and of the frame. So I think I was really like turned on my like art director skills in this, where I just like wanted to make sure that like there were layers in the shots that like could, or just kind of objects that could also help tell the story, in the same way that I think, you know, adding objects in photos can kind of like add layers to this, you know, concept of 1,000 words. So yeah.
Cool, that's really interesting, because I feel like it's so easy as a filmmaker to be hung up on every inch when you're behind the monitor and you're like stopping, starting, but like to be able to switch in and out to know when that's appropriate is like such an awesome skill. So yeah,
I feel like it just like turns off and turns on. Like there's times where I leave set and I'm like, damn, I didn't take any photos, like not even on my iPhone. But, you know, then I think like, why do I even need to? We have this entire crew, this entire expensive camera. Like we're capturing it. You know what I mean? It may not be in like the way that I'm used to, or just like, you know, have access to at my fingertips, but it is being captured. You know what I mean? Like everybody worked so hard up until this very point, script wise, art direction wise, you know, acting. So it's like, cool, let's just focus on this one medium. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. No, I can't wait to see it. I'm excited. And I think Salter shot it. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I think
he's so good. He's great.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like also like the DP for our film, he's so involved like in every step of the way. Like I just remember specifically the night before the shoot, like literally rewriting shots, and he was just there, and he has so many you know, elements that he brings to the table, because he's just so concerned with the storyline and how that looks on camera, and it really adds a lot to his shots, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I can't wait to see it. I think all of you are really, really good at being sort of like multi-hyphenate, like creative people. And I'm sure that all of that like came, you know, together in this film. I mean, there's so many of you that are like so talented that made it. So can't wait to watch.
Same. I can't wait to see everyone's.
And I would say that multi-hyphenate creative people thing applies to pretty much all of the films in the program. I really, honestly, the state of like local cinema, I don't know if you can even call it that, but it gets stronger every year, and I was particularly impressed with this year. So I'm very thankful to all of you for sharing your films with us, and we're excited to present them to Chicago audiences. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks,
Great.
Sam.
Thank
Good luck,
you.
everyone.
Bye.